Identity is, I think, at its very heart, who you are. Um, it's not defined by environment. It's not defined by who you hang around. It's the choices you make.
It's who you believe you are, who you project yourself to be.
I think identity is a culmination of your personality and your heritage.
I think where you come from is an important factor in identifying what your identity is.
It's the sum of the experiences and attitudes and beliefs that constitute an individual.
To me, it means everything that makes up who you are, who your parents are, how you were raised, what things you like, who you hang out with.
The emotions that you feel.
What you like to do.
It's not only who you are, but it's how you show who you are. It's more than just, I am white, I am a guy. It's how I dress, like what classes I take, what I do during the day.
Well, it's a tricky word, right? Because there's both identity as we see it about ourselves, but there's also how other people see us. And there may be similarity or overlap there, but there's also usually a pretty significant distance between what we think of ourselves and how other people see us. And in some cases, they may see something about us that we don't see about ourselves, and vice versa as well. So there's the overlap in that diagram, but then there's those areas of question around the edges.
The word identity means to me who a person is.
It's hard to nail down because I could say my identity is defined by my love for theater and my passion for music and chemistry and math, the books that I've read, how I was raised. But it's not always that simple because people change. It's a natural part of living life, and so your identity changes as you grow and as you change. So at any one given moment, I might be one thing, but then the next I might be totally different.
I think that goes to who you're around, what environmental situations you're in, what social situations you're in, what circles you're in, and you as a person take all of the input around you and you synthesize that into your choices. You choose to do X because you're in Y situation. I think the culmination of all of your choices really sums up what your identity is.
My identity is defined by my history and my individual personality.
The identity, it's very hard to encompass in a few things because obviously it's all of you. I'm a sister, I'm smart, and I like to do good in school. I like to talk to people even though it stresses me out.
I play ultimate frisbee and tennis.
Video editor, cinematographer, musician.
I am a hardworking individual.
I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a baker, I'm a friend, I'm a Christ follower.
I come from a European background.
Well, there's a lot of answers to that, right? First and foremost, I'm a teacher. And that is defining to me, not only because it's what I do every day, and it's the part of my identity other people, especially here, know about me, but it's something I didn't intend to do. It's not a part of my identity I sort of chose. I sort of stumbled into teaching and then discovered that that was my vocation. That's what I needed to do in life. I'm a gay man as well, which I think is important to identity because it suggests some of the obstacles that I've faced, and obstacles are those things which transform us most. I'm a singer. I wouldn't be myself without that. And I'm a Christian, which is something I do not usually talk about because it is so tremendously intimate to me that it's not something I like to sort of bring up in common conversation. But I have two tattoos. I have Aristotle on this arm, and I have a cross on this arm, and I find that I live my life between those two things.
I work on the robotics team. I do theater.
I take education very seriously. I come from a culture different than that found in the US. I'm Moroccan, and that plays a lot into my life and the way that I think and the way that I live.
I identify as a feminist, as someone who stands up for other women.
My heritage from Africa. My dad, he was from Nigeria and his family, and my mom was a pioneer who came to America. So I think their lineage is what makes up my identity.
Definitely you can put your identity in certain things. I used to put my identity in self-esteem or how other people viewed me, but now that's evolved as I learned who I am as a person. So you just learn to value yourself more.
I feel like I've kind of become more confident over time in high school. When I first entered into RTHS, I didn't really know who I was or what I wanted to do. But over time, I've kind of gotten more and more sure of what I want to do. It's kind of a change of it's maturing and growing up. You figure out what you want to do with your life.
As you get older, you just discover more things about the world and more things about yourself. It took me a little while to realize that I was into guys, but that's now a big part of my identity.
My mom was definitely very big on empowering women and young girls, and she kind of instilled in me that, love of learning and helping other people, and especially helping other women.
I was young and stupid, and I got older and wiser. But at its very core, the choices I made as a 15-year-old kid would still be the choices I make as a 45-year-old man, because they're still rooted in who I am. And I think we take the choices around us and use that to become who we are.
I don't really think my identity has evolved. I think I've just come to realize what my identity is, or become more self-aware.
I think that everyone's identity can change throughout their life. They can discover stuff that they like that they never knew that they were good at or they enjoyed. And I think identity also grows so much more when you're as you grow older, because you come to terms with who you are and you discover a lot more about yourself.
I've sort of taken on bits and pieces of friends and people that I've known in the past.
I would say personally for me, God, because he makes me and shapes me to who I want to be and be a better person, as well as my culture. Your culture kind of shapes your identity a little bit because you represent who your culture is.
So as I've gotten older, there are a lot of things that I understand about myself, more so than 2 years ago or even a month ago. Going through high school, growing up, going through those basic life benchmarks, I'm understanding more about myself, the way I think, things that I hold dear to myself, my beliefs, my standards. And as time has gone on, and I'm sure that as time continues to progress, I will continue to develop my moral beliefs.
So this is great. This is something I think about a lot, actually. I think that there is, inside of all of us, a sort of a thread or a ribbon that starts when we're born and sort of cuts off when we die. The Greeks actually thought that there was a thread that sort of traced us through life. And that thread is sort of the constant part of our identity. And as you do things through your life, it may twist or bend, but it stays the same. I mean, if you met me at 8 or 18 or 28, I still would clearly have been Ian, right? I'd still be this dorky, more clever than is worthwhile sort of person, always reading a book. But then everything around that thread changes. And that's what I love about humanity, is that we're not the same person all of our life. When I was 8, I was so obnoxious. You wouldn't believe just how annoying I was. And then at 18, I was a raver, and at 28, I was an actor. So there are all these things that on the surface seem very different, but there is that thread, that ribbon, that the Greeks would call a soul, that stays through and may be transformed, but never destroyed, never really truly changed at the heart. The thing I always think about is that people are like phoenixes, in that we die, but that ribbon is still there, so we get reborn. One identity ends, and another is waiting there to take its place. Oh, sure. I mean, that's the lens that we view everything through, but it's also the lens that other people view us. So it's an iterative process. That means you do a step, which leads to another thing, but then that thing changes the first thing, and so on and so on. So the way I view myself changes how I behave in the world, but then that changes how other people perceive me, and the way they perceive me changes how I perceive myself, and so on like that. It's a reinforcing cycle.
I think that people are inherently good. People are small-minded and focused on themselves, but not bad. And I suppose that's influenced my personality and my identity, because that reflects in how I argue things, especially politics.
Like I said earlier, coming from a different culture than that commonly found in the area where I grow up, I think I understand people on a different level. There are cultural instances where maybe I understand what someone's trying to express more so than another person who's not familiar with someone of another country. I, hope to get to travel to other countries and see how their culture, shapes my outlook on the world and in turn shapes my identity.
As you grow up, you realize that things in the world aren't perfect. I think as a child, you don't really exactly have an identity. You kind of just go with the flow and you do whatever you want. But as you grow up, you start learning that the world isn't really fair, and you start deciding that you either decide that you want to do something about it, or you decide that you don't want to do anything about it and you want to ignore those issues.
I try to make sure that everything I do, I see the human in other people, and so that means, I try to be nice to everyone first, and that's a big part of who I am.
I don't know. I think for me personally, no. I think it can, though, if people are in traumatic situations. It can shape how people view or who they want to become to maybe fix those issues.
In government and politics, we talked about do we have free will? And I personally think that we do have free will. And I think that influences my identity a lot, because I know that I have the freedom to lead myself to who I want to be and what I can do. And part of my identity is my drive and determination to try to be the best I can.
Identity is something that defines everyone's life, whether they know it or not.
Its composition may seem simple, but its meaning is complex.
A variety of perspectives provides a diverse understanding of what identity is and how it shapes us.
From heritage
To culture,
To interests.
Identity takes on a number of different forms.
And thus, it is unique for every single person.
Just like a fingerprint, no two identities are the same.
As our identities are molded by our experiences, they shift and evolve over the course of our lifetime.
An identity is never fixed.
It is in a constant state of fluctuation.
Learning, growing, and changing as we do.
identity is essential to making us who we are.
Our perspective of the world, and even our very existence, is derived from the current state of our identity.